All right, so we are going to get started. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit. Actually, one of the things that's going to be shorter than we kind of hope for is more of the housing and roommate selection piece. I'm not going to have so much info for you, but I'm going to talk about what it is. And then we're going to talk a little bit about who we are and some of the things you may have questions about. But if there's something that's not answered here, I encourage you to ask those questions. So to get started, our housing application for first-year students will go live on May 4th. And that application includes a questionnaire. So what that is you're telling us, I want housing, and here are some things about myself. Those questions might be, what time do you go to bed, whether or not you are someone who can study with the TV or music on, or you need complete silence, where you do your studying, what makes a good roommate. This is all really important when it comes to the roommate selection process. It allows us to be able to create basically a profile for you. So after your application is completed, our students are able to select roommates. And that can either be by searching a student specifically or using the search criteria from our program to be able to find someone. So for example, if I knew I wanted Mac O'Neill as my roommate, I could search Mac's name and I would be able to select her. Now to confirm that we'd be roommates, Mac would need to select me back. And so by us two choosing each other, we have basically solidified ourselves as roommates. If I selected Mac, but Mac doesn't respond or just chooses not to be my roommate, that does not happen. So it has to be mutual for both. If I can't find Mac's name, it's because Mac has not completed the application yet. And so you can only see people who've also completed the application. The other thing that you can do is through this search criteria is I might say to the system, who's someone who would be a good fit for me? And we prioritize things that maybe it's bedtime, things that we have found that students find very important. And it will tell you here are the students who maybe have an 89% matching to you. And you can look at their application and see, okay, yeah, this is someone that actually they like the same TV shows I like. They're looking for the same kind of respect. So this is all really important for me. And then you can select that person, you can message them. I want to say to our athletes, sometimes our coaches are really helpful and they want to help you pair with someone who is on your team, and they may say, why don't you room with this person? That still needs to be done through our system. Just because a coach works with you to identify someone doesn't mean that we necessarily, went a little bit too fast, that we know who those people are. So just being mindful that that is how our roommate search happens. And then our placement is usually determined after orientation. A lot of you might find someone that you really want to live with at orientation. Once we close this questionnaire though, you would need to email our office to request someone. And we will do our best to meet that request, but based off timeline, that may not be something that's doable. And so we want to make sure that when we have that time open, we really want our students to be going through and using it. If you haven't yet, I would really encourage you to watch the video that we made with admissions and put on, I think it was earlier this week, Amy, of our residence halls. And so we got to see Cedar, Maple, Willow, and Stonewall. So I'll talk about those a little bit. Cedar is entirely first-year students, mostly doubles, but some singles and quads. And the way that that works is when you go into a restroom, it is for all the male identified folks, they share one restroom. So all the showers, all the toilets and the vanities are in one kind of galley bathroom. And for our female identified students, they also have an identical bathroom on the floor. Our Maple community is also 100% first years, mostly doubles and singles. And they are single use restrooms. So when you go into that restroom, you close and lock it, and it looks a lot like what you have at home. So just being thoughtful that whichever works best for you, you may want to think about that. If you're looking for a single, Maple may be more your fit. Whereas if you're looking for an opportunity to share a big hallway, I know Kevin and Mac have both been RAs in those buildings in Cedar Hall, so they can talk about that. Willow is mostly doubles and triples. About 80% of the building is first years. We do have sophomores in there. Kevin and Ben have both been in that building as well. And single-use restrooms just like in Maple. Stonewall is suite style, doubles and singles with some triples. Only about 25% of the building are first-year students. And the students who live in a suite share the restroom. So the suites themselves are gender specific, either male identified or female identified, and they share a restroom. We're going to talk about living learning communities and themed communities in a little bit, but mostly Stonewall is filled with students who are part of those communities. If you are looking for a building, whether it be Maple, Cedar, Willow, that's where most of our first year students are going to live, unless they are part of one of the communities in Stonewall. Moving right to it. The difference between what we call living learning communities and themed communities is that our living learning communities are tied to a class or some sort of academic requirement. So examples of our living learning communities would be our honors program. They live in Stonewall. We have our peace program, which is through the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. It is a mentorship program. So if you were coming in asking to be a part of the peace program, you may want to live in this peace living learning community as well. And then potentially 2 major base living learning communities. We're still talking with engineering and criminal justice, which those students would basically be in a core level class for those two majors. Our themed communities, we have our queer and trans community for first year students. That falls within the LGBTQIA and ally umbrella. So for folks who identify with that and want to live in such an area, that is something that we have available for our students, as well as our Black diaspora themed area. This is a unique one because for our first year students entering this, they could very well be in a shared class, and therefore it is a living learning community. But for the entire floor, which spans from first year to our senior level students, it is open to all students who identify within the Black diaspora. So that could be our African, African American, African Caribbean, Black Latinx students. So with that, anyone who identifies within that Black diaspora would be able to pick this area. And then we have substance free. All of South Campus is substance free. There's no drugs allowed on campus, and alcohol is not allowed on our south side of campus. However, there are students that maybe through experiences in their own life not only want that substance-free life, but they would wish that the people around them also share that mentality. And so we do also have a floor that is substance-free as well. The Black diaspora, substance-free, and honors are those 3 areas that live in Stonewall Terrace. Our residential community staff, our community directors are our professional staffs that live and work in the halls. So they supervise our resident assistants, or RAs. They are promoting community building and education. And they're also the ones that would address any facility or safety concerns in the community. So they are that professional staff member that is kind of like the parent, for lack of a better word, for some folks who are looking for that in our residence halls. And then we have our resident assistants. They are full-time students. There can be 1 to 2 in every subsection of the community. They participate in an evening duty rotation every evening. They are our positive role models for the building. We expect that our RAs are not only strong students, but they are following the rules, and they may actually enforce our rules when there's violations that occur. And they are facilitating educational and social events in the community. What do we do overall? Talking to you about what our community directors do and RAs, we first and foremost are community builders. We want this to feel like a home away from home for you. We are putting on social and educational events for you. We always encourage our RAs to be connecting with our residents at all times, but at least 4 times in the year, we encourage them to have one-on-one conversations with every student in their area. So we give them guided questions just to know, here are the themes we want to know, how are our students doing with this, this, and this. And that's tied to the time of year. Around November, we're asking, what does it feel like to go home right now? What are some fears that you might have being home, maybe for the first time for some folks? We're promoting safety in the community, so we have staff on duty to make sure that if there is a need, that students have someone that they can call, but that we are also making sure that our buildings are safe for everyone who lives inside them. And we're also providing student leadership opportunities. For every residence hall, we have a hall council. And so that is a governing body of students that is made completely of students. We have our community directors and our head RAs who are the co-advisors, not the ones in charge, but just kind of helping out. Mac is actually a part of our Inter-Residence Hall Association who works with our hall councils. But with that, it's an opportunity for students to put on events for their building, advocate for the students in their living area, and that can be something you're involved in on day 1 in your living area. Okay, so with this, we're going to open this up to questions. I know I just saw a whole bunch of blinking orange for me. Amy's been following up with that, but our email below is rwhousing@rw.edu, and our phone number is seen below, area code 401-254-3161. The one thing I really want to stress is right now, as we are working remotely, the email is probably better than the phone number. We have one person kind of answering the phone as it's directed to their home, whereas multiple people are checking our RWE email. So if you have questions about this presentation, or if you're viewing this after it's been recorded and you have more questions, please email RW Housing and we're happy to answer those questions. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and actually go back, hand it back to Amy to kind of help moderate those questions. And I may jump in to say, hey, Ben, Mac, Kevin, why don't you jump into this knowing the buildings that you're in, but also feel free to jump in and say, I got this, Danny. So with that, thank you all for listening and we'll pass it over to Amy.
All right. Thanks so much, Danny. So we have quite a few questions in the chat. So I'm just going to go through them in order and read them out to you and then let you and your team kind of take them away. So the first question is from Brianna. Are there any forced triples?
Every year, depending on the numbers that admissions is reporting to us, depending on the number of admissions is reporting to us, we might have temporary triples. With that, we determine the spaces that are appropriate for temporary triples. This year, Willow Hall was the building that we had temporary triples in because we have these very large doubles that are zoned to be triples, and that's where we put them this year. Stonewall Terrace also has bigger rooms that can be tripled, so we try not to just like create a room and say, sure, every third room becomes a triple. We look at it and what's feasible for a triple. Any triple that is a temporary triple does get a money back after, and I think it's around late September, after we complete ad drop, which is usually about $750 per person who lives in the living area.
All right, great. So next question is from Victoria. What are the odds of getting a single if requested?
If you're requesting it, they generally are pretty good. We generally have people that after 3 weeks in, they go, wow, I really need a single and I want a single. Early on, a lot of students aren't thinking they want singles. A lot of students are like, I'm ready to be my best friend and roommate for life. And so with that, we do have students that would like singles. We also have people for medical needs need those singles. And so we will first determine based off need, and then we will be working with those students who've requested it. Just to be mindful that Maple Hall and Stonewall do have a lot of those singles. Cedar also has singles as well, but not as much as the other two do.
All right. Great. So, Danny, I think you might have touched on this in your last answer to the first question, but in what residence halls are the triples located?
Sure. RAs, jump in if I make any mistakes here. So I know that Stonewall Terrace does have built-in triples, and it's like 2 small rooms put together. But our corner rooms in Stonewall are rather large, and so those have been zoned for triples. We also have students who choose to make those triples. Willow Hall does have at least 2 triples per every unit, but we can build it up to as many as 4 with our temporary triples. I see Kevin nodding, so I'm happy. Maple Hall has maybe a triple per unit, if anything. And Cedar, I think, has a triple on the 5th floor, and I think that is it. Max nodding, so good. So we don't have too many triples. We have a lot of doubles, and we have more singles than we have triples. Cedar Hall also has quads, if that's something that you're excited about. So, did I miss anything, RAs? No, we got it? Good.
All right, awesome. So next question, and the next 3 are kind of Willow based. So I think I'll probably ask them in the order that they make sense. So can you explain specifically what the Willow dorm is, or any specifics?
Sure. Ben or Kevin, do one of you want to take the lead with that one, since you both were placed there as RAs?
Yeah, I could.
Okay.
So Willow is kind of separated into like townhouses. So with Cedar and Maple Hall, it's just one giant building. Everyone's in the same building. With the Willow, there's 7 different buildings. I think 2 of them are primarily like devoted for sophomores, and the other 5 are for first-year students. So it's sort of similar to Maple in terms of like the pods. Like you walk into a unit and there'll be about 4 doubles on the 1st floor. The 4 doubles share a bathroom. The 2nd floor will have 3 or 4 doubles and a triple. They share a bathroom. And then the 3rd floor will be the same as the 2nd floor. So it's more kind of like you're sharing a bathroom with the people around you, but each unit is separated into 3 floors.
Yeah, and those floors tend to be gender specific. So the first floor might be all male. Those 4 doubles might be all male with the RA there. The second floor might be all female identified, and the third floor might be all male.
All right, great. So the next 2 questions still Willow based, and I think I might combine them because they're similar. So the first one is, what are the odds of getting into Willow for freshmen? And then if you dorm in Willow, can you request to dorm in the same townhouse as friends?
Sure. So I'll answer this for pretty much any building. Right now, we are determining, I did see another one came in about requesting building. We're still trying to determine whether or not we're going to do that, include a request for a particular building. The reason why we haven't in the past was because when we had a lot more living learning communities, it was about pairing you in the living learning community. But now we recognize that as we're moving away from having so many, we want to be thoughtful about some people want particular buildings. In terms of requesting other friends, like the only thing we can guarantee for you is that you are living with your direct roommate. If you and your roommate are selecting each other, it's harder to be like, yes, I want to live with this person, but then I need this person within 2 doors from me. Like that's harder to make happen unless you are in a themed area like honors or any type of area where we know that you're going to be in a consolidated area with folks. In terms of getting Willow, if we are requesting, we're probably going to see it's just a matter of what year people are interested in. There are years where everyone wants Cedar, and there are years where everyone wants Maple, and everyone wants Willow. So it kind of depends on what you're all saying in terms of what you want. But what we try to do is just give you your choice of roommate first and foremost. That is the most important thing for us, to make sure we do that.
All right, awesome. Next question, where are the honors dorms located?
Honors is in Stonewall Building 4. It is the entire building, but we generally fill the 3rd and 2nd floor first. And then if we have overflow on the 1st floor, we've identified an RA that could be an honors RA, but also could just be an RA to any student. And so with that, Stonewall's built into 4 buildings. And so right now, building 4 is entirely honors. And the lower level of honors is the honors lounge. Ben, are you in the honors program?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add?
I would say I lived on the 1st floor of Stonewall my freshman year. So I was kind of like the overflow down on that bottom floor, and really enjoyed the experience. Also an honors classroom down on the bottom floor. So for those of you who are in the honors program, you may actually have some classes within your building, which was really cool. I could roll out of bed like 2 minutes before class started, run downstairs and be there on time. So there's some real perks to the honors program. And if there's more questions about that, I'd be happy to talk more about that as well.
Thank you.
All right, great. So the next question, I think I can answer because it's admissions related. So is the new date of June 1st to confirm your acceptance and make your deposit? So yes, we have extended our deposit deadline from the traditional May 1st to June 1st, just to allow for a little more time for everyone to make their decision and for where you're going to be going for the fall. So yep, June 1st. Okay. So next question is, what are housing options for non-binary identifying students?
Sure, absolutely. So with that, the one thing that we always kind of struggle with is our buildings are a little older, so they are built with this idea of a binary. With that, we have our queer trans living area, which it allows for singles. It also just allows for folks who are a little bit more open to gender inclusive spaces. We have for future years, we have a gender inclusive program that anyone can live with anyone. We also have a queer trans area for our upperclassmen. For our first year students, generally for those who don't necessarily identify as the binary, we have that queer trans living area. If for you, you want to say, hey, I want to be a part of another living area that doesn't have that, I would say reaching out to us individually so that we can work with you. You know, we have honor students who don't identify as the binary of male, as male identified or female identified, or maybe transitioning. And so with that, having gender specific suites, we want to be really mindful about that person's comfort, but also helping them with their suite because people may have questions. And so with that, we really work with you. So we have those areas, we have singles, and Maple and Willow would also be a really good area for those students because it is a private bathroom that then you can enclose yourself in and have that privacy, not share it with others. A building like Cedar might be challenging just because you have more of those galley bathrooms, and Stonewall being gender specific. Suites can be a challenge, but we will always work with our students to try to make sure that they don't feel like they have limitations in what they can have for housing. And I hope that answers that question.
Se par exemple, quoi, si, par exemple, les teint jeune de la fille garçon, c'est par exemple, quand tu as payé. You can't pizza unless you're not chamber not well because you keep private.
I think someone's microphone is still on. So.
Yeah, if there's a little bit of background noise, so if everyone can make sure that they're muted, that way we can keep running through the questions and kind of keep the pace with everything. So next question is, does first year housing include transfer students? And Danny, I wonder if maybe you can dive a little bit into how you house transfer students too.
Yeah, it depends on the transfer student and the experiences that they've had. We have students who technically identify as transfer coming in with college credits. We have students who have done a year residential at another school. And we've also had students who've maybe done a community college experience where they've lived at home. With that, we try to look at how many credits they're coming in with and what experience that they've had. There are transfer students that being placed in a building like Cedar or Maple would still be advantageous for them. There are others that might come into this as a 20-year-old and living with first-year students when they maybe haven't had a residential experience, but they feel maybe older than some of the other students. We want to be really thoughtful about that. So there are some students that we will place within our first-year living areas. There are others that we have specifically in Stonewall. We try to have suites that are focused on transfers. And for our older students who might come in technically as rising juniors or seniors, if they credits don't always cross over the way we always hope that they will for our students, but they might be coming in with a little bit more credits, and we will look at them for our North Campus Residence Hall or apartment style because they maybe have had a residential experience for a couple of years. So it depends on the student and also what that student is looking for.
Great, awesome. So next question is, if someone has a medical reason to need some air conditioning in Willow, should they submit that with the housing application?
Anyone who has any type of medical needs should be going through our medical accessibility. So our SAS housing accessibility forms, which are on our website. What happens is that information asks for information from a doctor, typically your main practitioner, and then that information gets sent along to our Student Accessibility Services office. Once it is approved saying this is what a student needs, they will get back to us and say, here are the students and this is what they need. So if someone needs, carpet-free rooms because of allergies, if someone needs air conditioning, if someone needs a single based off medical needs, that information comes back to us and that's how we will place them. We have students who say, I'd prefer to have this. We will always do the medical needs first, but we do our best to help every student who has a particular need. So I would say if you've got that documentation, look at our website and you will actually see that there is a SAS housing accommodations link, and then you just follow that. It gives you all the forms that your doctor needs to complete and where that information needs to go.
Thank you, Danny. And then, all right. There's a lot of questions, so I don't want to.
I know. I saw a lot about air conditioning, so I'll probably knock that off right now.
No, that's
Willow and Stonewall are air conditioned. And so with that, Maple, we had a plan before all this COVID-19 stuff started happening, was to get Maple common areas air conditioned. I don't know if that's going to be able to happen in terms of us getting into our halls right now, but Stonewall and Willow are air conditioned. Cedar Hall, our common areas are air conditioned, and on the first floor there is air conditioning. Maple is not. I would say, Kevin, you could probably jump in on this, but Maple Hall, yep, the first couple weeks is rough without air conditioning, but then after that point, it doesn't really affect our students too much in Maple. but I do know when you move it in April and there's a lot of stairs in Maple, it matters at that point. But Kevin, anything you want to add about you? Kevin has actually lived in almost every building. He was an RA in Maple, Cedar, and Willow, so he can jump to all that. So.
Yeah. So in Maple, yeah, definitely the first few weeks was kind of rough. You just bring a lot of fans, and then like the ocean breeze kind of gets into your room after a few weeks. And honestly, by like the end of September, it's really no issue at all. It's just getting through the first few weeks. Same with Cedar, but also like Roger Williams is also, it's really windy all the time. So whenever that breeze does come through, it's really refreshing. So you don't have to worry about that. And then having the AC in Willow is really nice last year.
Some of our rooms do have carpeting and some do not. So if you have a specific need for carpeting or not carpeting, you would also let us know that. So sorry, I know you had a lot of those, Amy, so I want to try to check that off for you.
All right, awesome. So next question, do you have to find your own roommate, or will RW match you based on the survey?
We can match you based on the survey. So if you're like, let's just let the school do their thing. Sometimes it works out really, really well. If they're like, you all picked me the best roommate. Sometimes not so much. Sometimes people are like, I came from a best friend from home, and 2 months in, it's like, this didn't go well. Ben, I saw you take your mic off, so maybe you want to share.
Yeah, so I actually came in with a random roommate. I just said, I'll let you do whatever. And my roommate and I became best friends. We actually both became RAs in Willow last year, and we were right next to each other. So I had a really awesome random roommate pairing. But I also know people that went in with a matched roommate from home that they also really enjoyed that experience. So it really does work out. And if you're just trusting the school to match you, I think you'll, for the most part, generally be pretty happy with that as well.
Mac, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I also did random my first year, and it worked out really well. We're still friends. Like, I wouldn't say we're best friends, but we got along so well. Like, it was perfect. And then I lived Bayside, which is like where upperclassmen live, my junior year, first semester, and it was me and my two other friends, and we needed one other roommate, so we did random again, and again that worked out really well. So twice I did it, and it was fine. So
sometimes we get it, and sometimes I think in any case, like anything can happen. The one thing we really try to work with our students off is saying, well, we want you to fill out a roommate agreement at the beginning of the year. And so talk about those things that maybe you don't think about talking about, like whether or not they can use my items. That may not occur to you in that moment, but when someone takes your stuff, that's when it actually bothers you. So we try to ask the questions that we've seen issues occur, because all of us have different experiences. Some of our siblings say, don't come into my room. Some siblings say, yeah, you can come on in and take whatever you want. And then there's a spectrum, right? So with that, we just kind of have to work that each of you are coming from a different experience. And we're really trying to help you be able to address that early on rather than finding out that there are problems. So.
Awesome. Two questions about the housing application. On the housing application, do you get a choice on which building you prefer to live in? And are you able to request a water view on the housing application?
You can always request anything, whether or not it can come to fruition. I can't promise anything. Now, I had just finished talking to my director right before this just to say, hey, are we moving to being able to request buildings? That is still something that they are in the works on. You will see it in the application if we are having you able to ask for buildings. There's usually a section where you can say, is there anything else we need to know about you? And you can say, I prefer Willow with a view of the water. A lot of our buildings do have water views. It's wonderful, but also the water is not far from you. Like if you can find a perfect space on campus. So sometimes we all want a water view. The way their buildings are facing, half of Cedar won't have a water view. And so you can always request that. For some folks, it's just more calming. It's maybe why you came to Roger Williams. It's a beautiful area. You can see it behind Amy right now. So with that, yeah, we got a lot of water views.
Oh, yeah.
You can always request it. We can't always grant everyone who's asking for it.
Great. So a couple questions just to divert a little bit from the housing app on pricing. So is there a pricing difference between the residence halls, as well as is there a price difference between suites compared to regular dorms? Just to dive into that.
No. So for all of our first year areas, whether you're in a double in Stonewall, a double in Willow, double Maple, it's all the same price. Where you'll see a price difference is where someone has selected a single. Singles are a little bit more per semester. And so with that, typically it's just the single where you'll see a jump in that. Otherwise, that's pretty much it.
All right. Is there a specific residence hall that's gender specific?
No residence hall is gender specific. We know that there is a floor in Cedar that is gender specific, and that is because after a remodel, there is one restroom in the wing. And that is going to be a male identified wing. What you'll more likely see is little clusters of rooms that might be all male identified or female identified. That exists in Stonewall, Willow, and Maple. Where it doesn't exist right now is Cedar, just because the Cedars are the long hallways, whether it's you're next to a male identified room or female identified room, it could be either. No units are specifically all one or another, unless like what we've seen sometimes is with our engineering living learning community, we had more male identified engineers who applied to be in that area. So it seems more male heavy right now. But that is not because we made it male only or female only.
Do you place students in housing and with roommates in the order in which, you know, certain preferences or housing residence hall requests are, or is it just a completely random process?
A lot of it's more random. We're looking at it from, we're trying to make it as equitable as possible. And so for some folks, it can't be like the first time you get your application in, because there are some folks that maybe can't make that payment right away. And so what we're looking for is what are people asking for, especially if there's a specific type of living area that they're looking for in terms of like a living learning community or a themed area. We know with that, we kind of are moving people to those areas, and then we can try to meet everyone's requests to the best of our ability.
All right, great. Is there an engineering LLC?
We're hoping that there is. We are still working with our partners over on academic affairs to try to make that happen. The one thing that there's a lot of moving pieces with that, and just making sure, like, one, do we have a faculty member ready? We are ready with our memorandum of understanding with them, and we are ready with RAs just in case that happens. But if it doesn't happen, we are just going to be placing, we might find more engineers in one area than another. But for the most part, what we want to make sure is that it's intentional and that we're supporting that area for what it needs. So we're still waiting on our friends over. We're still kind of in negotiations because there's a lot of work both on the academic and student life side that goes with that. And we don't want to jump into anything if we're not ready.
Great. Another question, are there fire drills in the residence halls?
Yeah, I'll let an RA handle that. Mac, do you want to talk about that?
So there are fire drills, and I got lucky this year and missed all of them because of meetings or what. But they're pretty quick. They just want you to just be safe and know like how to exit the building properly. Like they're not going to make you do it at 4 o'clock in the morning. If it happens at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's because someone burnt popcorn. It's not because they're making you do a drill. And they're not going to make you do it when it's like negative 15 degrees out. Like it'll probably be in the beginning when it's warm at an appropriate time. And then if there is something that comes up where that might be an issue for you, you can always talk to your RA or the community director of your building, and they can help you figure something out. So it's nothing to really worry about. So just talk to your RA.
Awesome, great. So one question is, are you able to walk around campus right now? And I can probably talk slightly about that. Right now, I mean, we're trying to get everything virtually online so that way you guys, you know, don't have the need to come on campus just because of everything that's going on. You are able to drive through campus if you're in the area, but we don't encourage anybody walking around right now just for the safety and health of everybody. But, you know, if you, we have a couple of new videos online for our, an actual live recording of a campus tour, which kind of touches on each building. And then there's a video of Danny giving a residence hall tour as well that we just posted online last week. So you guys can, if you go to the accepted student website, accepted.rw.edu, the first box that comes up is a link to our virtual, all these virtual presentations we're doing. And at the bottom of that page is where there's a couple of links to all the recordings. So you can find them there. So one good question, can you give more details about the food, cafeteria, dining?
I'm gonna let Mac raised her hand, so I'll let Mac run into it because really they all eat at the Commons more than I do.
I love Commons so much. It's like a buffet. We have amazing food. They always do things like, I'm pretty sure this time last year today, there's lobster and steak dinner a year ago. You get like a ticket for that. So you get your choice of like a steak or lobster, which I don't know many colleges that do that, but that's pretty cool. And then on the weekends, there's like brunch, there's like a donut bar, omelet station, like it's so good. And now I'm moving out and I have to make my own food and I'm so sad. I'm gonna miss Roger food, which not a lot of kids can say about their college and loving their food. So we have really good food.
Kevin or Ben, do either of you want to chime in on that?
I completely agree. It's sad that I had my last meal in Commons and I didn't even know it. That's how good it is.
Yeah, and I would just add that we have a lot of different themed dinners throughout the year. So we have late night breakfast, which is really fun. That's during finals week, right at the beginning of finals week. I think it's right from 10 to midnight, both semesters. And it's faculty and staff of the university who are handing out French toast and bacon and delicious food and stuff like that. And there's also like a theme nights for like Valentine's Day. There's a chocolate fountain a lot of times, or like Thanksgiving dinner, or like they decorate Commons like all spooky for Halloween. So Commons and the Commons staff does a lot of work to really make the dining experience special for students at Roger Williams. And it really is terrific food. So you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, so just to chime in, Aiden, I just saw your question. So it is its own separate building. The Dining Commons is its own separate building in the middle of campus. So none of our residence halls are attached to a dining area. Our North Campus Residence Hall, which is also more of a hub for commuters and a lot of our sports areas, has a little convenience store in it, but there are no dining commons in there. Our dining also does a really great job of meeting the needs of our students, especially with different food needs. So if you are gluten-free, if you have any type of food needs, we encourage you to meet with someone because they're going to work with you and say, okay, how can we make this happen? And I've generally found that most students with any type of food allergies have not had an issue working with their dining commons. So.
And real quick, just to add one other thing, we also have lower commons. So upper commons is like the main dining area where you use your meal swipes. Lower commons, you use a declining balance of money to buy food. And lower commons is fantastic. It's like the late night option on campus. It's open till 1 a.m. And you can get pretty much anything there. So between upper and lower commons, all of your food needs are really accommodated.
Great, awesome. Another question, are there specific living areas that are better for anyone with allergies?
It's sometimes based off rooms. I know with a lot of people with allergies, air conditioning may be more beneficial for them than others. Even questions about like which rooms have carpet and which ones don't. With Cedar, Maple, and Willow, there's rooms with carpet and rooms without carpet. Stonewall's completely carpeted, so it just depends on what your allergy is. And working with us in the housing office just to kind of determine what those needs are. But with that, it would really determine what that need would be, and we'd work with you on those allergy needs.
All right, great. So a couple of questions that I'm going to try to group a few together. Does requesting or completing your housing application earlier get you a better chance for your top choice? And then another question, is it first come, first serve? So I don't know if Danny, you want to.
Yeah, we've done that in the past. We're just trying to determine what's fair and equitable and all that. Now, mind you, like if we're saying this is when this information is in, like those folks are going to be housed first. When someone wants housing in middle of August saying I need something, they're not getting their first choice. We get the day before move in, like here are 5 students that we're placing in housing. Like they may say I really want this building, and we're going to say we'll do our best, but we can't promise you anything. We have in the past done that. From what I'm understanding from our new director is that we're going to try to do that a lot less, but still be mindful about when people have at least when they've deposited, in terms of have they met the deadline of the deposit. That is the most important thing right now, is if they've met the deadline, we treat all those people as like, let's get them housed. Anyone who doesn't meet the deadline, which is a big window, they would not necessarily be placed before someone who actually met our deadline. So.
All right, and a couple of questions on what, like, or how to specifically maybe fill out the housing application or roommate questionnaire. So I'll kind of group some of these together. When we fill out the forms for our potential roommates, can we request the hall we would like to live in, or how do we request a living learning community? Just a kind of group of
Sure. Living learning communities will also have an additional application. So with that, it will say if you're interested in one of these areas, this is where you'll be placed. This is the form you'll need to fill out. For our honors living learning community, it will be a immediate, if you were in honors, you were going to the honors living learning community. The only reason why that wouldn't be the case is if there was an additional living area that you wanted. So if you wanted to be in the Black diasporic and you're in the honors living learning and you're in the honors program, we would have you fill out the application for the area that you want, and then we'd work with the honors program to say this student is not going to be living in honors. But for the most part, honors immediately goes there. Any other living learning community, there would be a special application that you fill out. So whether it's substance free, whether it's our queer trans, we would have you also fill out that application because we have partners who would be reviewing that. If we have someone who doesn't truly identify, or maybe their answers are not necessarily, we're not sure this person understands what this living area is, we have partners that part of our memo of understanding with them is that they will approve anyone who's going into those spaces. In terms of filling out whether or not you can have a specific building, I know we addressed it earlier. That I don't know if we're going to be doing yet, but based off of the requests that a lot of you are doing, I'm definitely going to pass that along to my partners on the operations side to say there were a lot of questions about asking for specific buildings. Does that answer that question, Amy, you think?
I think.
I jumped all over the place, so I just want to be sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to folks that are, on the session right now, if we, we're grouping some of the questions together. If we didn't hit quite on your question, you can email rwhousing@rw.edu to kind of get a little more specific, maybe on what you're, trying to, help getting answered. So just know that we have quite a few questions coming in, so we're kind of going through them as best we can. So the next, I got another few questions I'll group again together and more specifics about the actual rooms themselves. So first question, does a single room have its own bathroom?
No, not necessarily, no. Most of the rooms that that we have, they will be using bathrooms which everyone else is using. So I could answer that pretty quickly.
Okay, great. And then what size are the beds, and can they or do they need risers to change the height, that kind of a thing?
Extra long twin is what our beds are. You can find them at pretty much any home, like any college prep store that exists, like that size does exist. We raise the beds in things like temporary triples. The one thing I really want to be mindful of is that you're looking at our regulations and what to bring and what not to bring. Like, I say this and people laugh, but like cinder blocks are not appropriate raisers for beds. You might be like, obviously, I agree with you, but some people do that. So it needs to be something that is approved through our university if you're raising your bed. Anything that raises your bed about 6 inches, and it's usually almost like a cone that's pretty sturdy, we're fine with that. The beds also raise and lower, you can lift them and lower them as well. But anything that would rise your bed 3 feet higher in the air, we're going to say no to.
Great. One question I saw earlier, and I'm going to group it with this next one. So I wanted to confirm, there was a question, when's the housing deposit deadline? So that also is June 1st. So if you're planning to enroll, both the enrollment reservation and the housing deposit has that June 1st due date. One question, if the deposit is due June 1st, will the housing application move to after June 1st? So Danny, I know the timeline for that is the housing application opens May 4th and it's open till June 12th to give enough time for everybody to.
Right now, yes, but we also might be extending that deadline based off of what numbers look like. I mean, a lot of it also depends. We're working on a timeline with orientation as well. So if orientation is delayed, we will be delaying our process as well. So right now, we are definitely opening May 4th is when our application goes live. And we will be, going through to the June 1st deadline, and then past that, whether we go even later, we will see. There's a lot of things that are in the air right now. We know that with a lot of people, maybe applying for unemployment, there's a lot of questions about finances and things like that. And so we need to also be mindful of where our families are at right now and how we can work to support those students and their families. So with that, right now, yes, June 12th, but that could change and that could be delayed or pushed later if we need it to be.
Okay, great, thank you. So one question that's a little different from some of the others that we've gone through, I want to make sure I hit this one. Is there off-campus housing for upperclassmen? If so, where, and how do you manage to get to campus? Will you need a car, or are there shuttles, kind of a thing?
Ed Manning, can I have you address that for me?
Yes, so there are two off-campus living areas that are owned by the university. I'm currently living in one of them, and I'll be living in the other one next year. So that's why Danny picked me for this question. So the two areas are the Almeida Apartments and Bay Point Residence Hall. Bay Point is all sophomores, or at least primarily sophomores, and that is like a renovated hotel that the university owns. Almeida is an apartment-style complex in downtown Bristol, and that is for sophomores and juniors primarily. Those units in Bay Point are primarily doubles. In Almeida, you're going to have triples and quads, but they are apartment style, so they're a bit bigger. In terms of transportation, there is a shuttle that goes back and forth between Bay Point, Almeida, and campus, as well as other spots off campus. And a popular question in the chat has been, can you bring a car? So just to touch on that question, first-year students are not allowed to have cars on campus. Starting your sophomore year, you can have a car on campus, but all first-year students would be living on campus. There wouldn't be any off-campus first-year students, so you wouldn't need it as much your first year. That being said, the shuttle is pretty reliable. I personally do have a car living off campus just because I like to have it as a backup just to make sure, but I do find myself using the shuttle quite a bit as an option for transportation.
Some of the things that we've also had to, the first month or so takes us a little bit of time. So I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, Bay Point, for some reason, every sophomore in Bay Point had an 8 a.m. class, and the shuttles we didn't have enough shuttles that went through. So then we had to actually add another shuttle time for their morning so that all those students could get to campus. So it takes us a little bit of time to realize, like, wow, for some reason, all the sophomores have 8 a.m. classes. How are we making sure that we're meeting their needs? And we work with public safety to make sure that we are doing that. So.
Great, thank you. So is there 100% chance of housing for all 4 years? So I guess is housing guaranteed all 4 years?
Sure. Housing is required for 2 years. And we've always said that if you are going through and filling out your returning housing application and paid your housing deposit for every year, you are able to go through housing selection. Where we cannot guarantee housing is if you have not done anything and like you didn't pay the housing deposit, you didn't do the housing application, and then you've just said, hey, I want housing. We can't guarantee you housing based off of the need of first-year students and the ones who've paid their deposit that we need to make sure have housing. And anyone who's moved off of campus, like moved out of university housing. So then maybe they rented a house in Bristol or Portsmouth or Warren, one of our neighboring towns, and then say, hey, I want to come back into housing. We can't guarantee that. That's all depending on numbers. I've never known us to say to a student, sorry, we can't bring you back. But we just don't guarantee that to our students if they've made those choices. But as long as you've done everything you need to do, when we've sent out information about coming back to housing for the next year, we have not had any issues with those students coming back and having housing in our res halls.
Great, awesome. Couple of questions again, so I'll just kind of reiterate it again on, is there a virtual tour of the residence halls, and and actually where is the dining commons, which is like our cafeteria located on campus. So the dining commons is actually kind of right in the center of campus. So, you know, all of the residence hall are kind of around it. So it's not like it's all the way on, you know, North Campus and you're walking from the southernmost point. So it's right in the middle of campus. So again, you can visit our accepted student website, which has a link to all of our pre-recorded sessions and then a list of all the virtual live ones that are going on to find the residence hall tour, as well as we've recorded an actual campus tour with one of our tour guides right before we all kind of started to work from home. So check those out so you can get a good kind of proximity of campus. And we do have online too, you can find a campus map, which kind of can show you like an overview of where everything is. So just to kind of address that. Danny, is there a place maybe on the website? There's a lot of questions on what are the specific LLCs. Is there a place where folks can find a list?
We are updating our list. So what you see on the website is our last one. We were figuring out all the final things with our groups, but what you saw on the website right now, what you've seen in this presentation is what we have. So you'll see that we've decreased quite a bit. A lot of that was that we were trying to serve too many individual groups and we weren't doing it all that well. What we wanted to do was serve a smaller set of groups who wanted to be there, and that we would do that well and intentionally. So what you saw in terms of what I presented, that is the number that we were looking at, with the exception of those 2 additional academic LLCs that may show up. When the application is live in May, you will actually see all the options for you. And what we had last year was there was an additional link for you to click, and then you could actually read about each of these living learning communities. So that website will be updated with everything, probably within the next week.
Okay, great, awesome. A couple of admissions questions again, so I'll pipe in on these. How much is the deposit? So the enrollment reservation is a $200 deposit, and then the housing deposit is an extra $350. So if you're planning on living on campus, you would pay a total of a $550 deposit by June 1st. Another question, let's see. I'm just kind of scanning through the list. Some of these are kind of questions that we've already hit on. So,
Amy, I saw something that if you're looking, I can jump into it.
Yeah.
I asked about service animals or emotional support animals. Service animals, you just need documentation for it. Emotional support animals have to be approved through our SAS office as well. There are, with any type of emotional support or service animal, there's documentation you need to make sure you've completed with us. Fish are allowed, I just saw that. So yes, you can bring a fish. And a 20-gallon tank is the largest tank that we allow. I say that because our marine bio students love to bring in their own tanks. But typically anything like that is yes allowed. We work with you on the expectations. If you're looking for a roommate, we need to make sure that your roommate, one, isn't allergic to that specific animal, that they're not afraid of animals. These are all things that we have to work with you on. And we have someone in our office, Teresa Capello, who is our Associate Director of Residence Life and Housing, and she particularly works with all medical needs, SAS accommodations, or emotional support animals, service animals. She works with people for all that. The one thing I need to stress to people is that emotional support animals are not service animals, and sometimes they think like, I can bring my emotional support animal to my work study job or to class. They are allowed to reside in your residence hall room, but they are not traveling with you on campus. Sometimes students forget that or don't necessarily understand that they think that like their cat or dog from home can come with them everywhere, and that's not the case. Whereas with service animals, that is the case because our service animals are providing a particular service in that moment for you.
Great, thank you. And scanning through a couple questions about mini fridges and microwave, what you can bring or what's already in the room.
Sure. We work with a company called Microfridge. Microfridge, if you want to rent a microfridge, it will be there when you check in. It could be a cost split amongst you and your roommate or roommates. You can also bring a fridge on your own. We usually say 4 cubic feet is what is allowed. The reason why microfridge works for us is that when the microwave is on, the refrigerator and freezer turns off. It's due to fire code as well as it's an energy saving component. You can bring your own microfridge if you were to purchase your own. Maybe there's one in the family, as long as it has that effect that one turns off, the microwave is on, the fridge and freezer turns off. You cannot bring your own microwave. And so with that, just know that we have microwaves in every common space in all 4 of those buildings. For Willow, there's one on the first floor of every unit. Maple, there's one in every unit in the common room. Stonewall on the first floor, and maybe the second and third floor as well. Cedar, one on every floor. So there are microwaves for folks who need them. And I just saw the question, how much is it to rent a mini fridge? If you go to collegerefrigerators.com, I believe it is, but we'll also make sure that that's available. But I want to say it comes to, I'm going to mess it up as soon as I say it. I think it's something like $200 for the year to rent. You can also purchase it right out. I would suggest, the problem with purchasing it straight out means that like after your first or second year where you're in a traditional style area, you move to an apartment where there is already a full fridge. So do you lose out on that? Like, have you paid for something you don't need? So just kind of determining, is this an investment that you want to make? Are there siblings where it's going to be passed around that it might be worth purchasing? Otherwise, if you rent it, it will be in the room there and it'll be taken out at the end of the year.
All right, great. I think the last couple, I think I got down to the bottom of the list, which is great. But if I saw a few questions on if you guys can describe the layout of a quad again, there was quite a few on that.
Mac, do you want to jump in on that one? Are you good with that?
Yeah. So there's quads on there's one actually on the bottom floor of Cedar, just one on the north side. And then there's quads on the entire top floor of the 5th floor, besides where the RAs are living. And then there's also a triple. Quads are actually huge, and I've seen people set them up in such like cool ways, whether each like room is set up in their own way where everyone has their own thing to themselves, or sometimes all the desks are pushed together and the beds are bunk beds, and then they have all this room to have a couch and whatever. So it all depends on how you and your roommates want to set up your quad, but it's a large space, and I know putting 4 people in a room might sound like it's going to be tight, but it's really not. It's a really good sized room. It's kind of just like 2 doubles being put together, and everything's organized so that you have your own space and then you can do what you want.
Thanks, Mac.
All right, awesome. I think we hit everything. So I can give it another few seconds or so if anybody wants to type any type of quick, last call kind of question, and then
so how many suites? So there are 4 suites on a floor in Stonewall. There are 12 floors in Stonewall because it's 4 buildings with 3 each. So we have a total of 48 suites. Pierce, I saw your email question earlier, and I'll answer it real quick. So there's a total of 48 suites. So really in the building, there's 4 on a floor, and those suites come into a common area. So typically, if you're on a floor in honors, like there might be 2 male identified, 2 female identified suites with 10 people, and then a large common room for you all. Pierce, we do health and safety checks, yes. It usually happens at least once in the semester, and then when we leave for breaks, we'll also do those checks. Those are told to you, like they're going to be happening during these weeks. They are to look for health concerns. It is not meant to kind of wake you up in the middle of the night and start like going through things. It is just to make sure that there's not any fire code violations or anything like that. So.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for kind of adding in some questions. Are the doors regular keys or key cards?
On South Campus, they're all hard keys. Everything is a hard key. Your ID will get you access to whatever first door there is to get to the building. And usually there's about anywhere from 2 to 3 doors before you are in your room. So with Willow, it's a little bit different because there's so many different buildings. You've got your first door and then you go to your room. But with Cedar and Stonewall and Maple, like you're going through multiple doors just to get to your room. So all of those multiple doors are ID card that's keyed just to you. And then you're given an actual room key for your own bedroom.
Okay, great. This is a good one. If you're on the wait list for our honors program, so if you're a student that falls into that category and you get actually admitted to the honors program and pulled off the wait list, how does that tie in if you're accepted into honors at a little bit of a later date?
That's a great question. I would say to reach out to Jeremy Campbell, who runs the honors program. Jeremy is going to give me a formal list of who is going to be living in that area, so that we on our operations side can make sure that those students are getting those areas. I would just say, whether I'm in honors or not, could I please be in this area? He'll most likely say yes, because Jeremy loves when people want to be in the honors program. We just want to be mindful that we have spaces for those who are truly in it. But I don't foresee him having a concern with that, but just emailing him ahead of time so that he can let me know who is on the list.
Okay, great. How does cleaning of the bathrooms go? Do you clean your own, or how does that work?
On our south side of campus, we have custodians who clean all of those restrooms, which is part of the reason right now we're not doing tours of residence halls and we've stopped students coming in, because we also want to be mindful of our custodial staff so that they're staying healthy during this unique time. But custodians have multiple areas that they are responsible for, and they are working around, like if we have a male identified custodian who's cleaning a bathroom that might be mostly female identified folks around there, like what time of day are they going in there? They have a lot that they're trying to manage, but they do clean every common space. It is our upperclassmen areas where they often have their own restrooms, like Bay Point, Alameda, North Campus, and Bayside. We do not have staff clean those restrooms. They are responsible for their own.
Great, awesome. Do you have to pay to keep your car on campus starting sophomore year? Which I believe there is a there is a fee for that. I forget how much.
Yeah, do one of you know how much that is?
It's $185.
$155, Mac?
85.
At 185.
All right. And then let's see. Here's a kind of I'll read it out and you tell me if this, kind of makes sense in your world with housing. If I request a room with someone in the engineering program and I'm a criminal justice major, would we be able to room in the living learning community that you specified earlier? I'm not sure.
Well, that all depends on particular areas. So I'll use an example with our affinity-based groups first and foremost. So when I say affinity-based, it could be our queer, trans, or our Black diasporic. For our Black diasporic, if we had a Black identified student who wanted to live with a white identified student, the answer would be no, they can't go and live in that space together because that other student doesn't necessarily identify. Or if the roommate maybe didn't feel comfortable living in a queer trans living area or had specific things that they were feeling like, I don't know if I can do that, we would say no. In those academic based ones, it depends on the group that we're working with, where with the peace one, where one student might be in this mentorship program, the other one isn't. Professor Diamore was like, yeah, by all means, the more the merrier, I'm great with it. Whereas some, they might say, we only have a certain amount of spaces for engineers, and therefore we want to keep it all engineers. So with that, we might be a little bit more strict as the school year begins. As students are kind of figuring out where they want to live, if we have an opening in the engineering living learning community and one engineer and one criminal justice member says like, hey, can we go into that space and we've got it, we'll say yes. But at least for the start of the year, we try to make sure that it is, we look at what the criteria is of our partners on the academic side and what they're looking for the students who are living there. Because like I said, they are approving everyone who is going into those spaces and we are just placing them. Caitlin, I just saw your email. Yes, there's a laundry room in every single residence hall. It's $1.50 to wash, $1.50 to dry. If you use the card swipe and you have, like, for example, points on your ID, which is what Ben was talking about, kind of that decreasing amount. I believe it's $1.25 per wash, $1.25 per dry. But with that, Cedar has 2 on the first floor. Stonewall has 1 in each of its building. Willow has 1 above the Willow Rec Room. If you see the video that we did of the residence halls, you'll see the Willow one. And Maple has 2, 1 in the 4-5 tower and 1 in the 9-10-11 tower. Everyone has access to any laundry room if they live in that building. So even if you don't live in the 4-5 tower, you can get into that tower to go do your laundry.
All right, and I think I'll wrap up. I'm just gonna call out a couple of the quick ones. How old are the dorms?
Oof.
Ugh. It depends.
Cedar and Maple they're much older than me. They were here right when the school was first built. So I want to say 60s. It was Cedar first and then Maple. They were known as building 1 and 2. Very unique names. Stonewall was built in 2001 and Willow was built in the 90s. We have a campus plan to kind of restructure what South Campus would look like. And with that, most of these buildings, with hopefully within the next 20 years or so, might look very different and be different buildings altogether. So they are on the older side, which is why Cedar and Maple don't have that air conditioning. It's often more expensive to try to force air conditioning into a building than it is to rebuild a building. But the plan is right now to try to bring everything up for us so that buildings are more accessible for folks, that we're being mindful about, you know, those who might have mobility issues, for allergy issues, things that you've all asked about. So that is the goal in the future, but right now, those are kind of the ages for those buildings.
And one question I wanted to address, when can we maybe tour campus? Right now, I mean, our emergency response team on campus, we're following the CDC guidelines and, you know, the stay-at-home orders for the state. So we're hoping, you know, campus reopens again. I mean, right now we're hoping for May, but it's kind of one of those things we have to be flexible with and just see, you know, how things are going. So once we're up and running with our tours and registrations again, just keep an eye on your email because we will be letting everybody know. We'll be we'll be shouting it out because we want to see everybody. So yeah, just keep an eye and we'll communicate that out to you as soon as we can. All right. I think that just about does it.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Danny, Mac, Kevin, and Ben for, you know, sharing all your information today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having us.
All right.
Once again, if you have questions, rwhousing@rw.edu, and we'll try to answer those as quickly as we can. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekends.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, RAs.